Jaya Radha Gopinath Radha Gopinath Radhe. Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe. Oh Jaya Vrishabhanu Nandini Radhe Radhe Vrishabhanu Nandini Radhe Radhe. Oh Radhe 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 Radhe. Jai Shri Guru Garanga Ganhavi Giridhari Radha Vinod Vihari Ju Ki Jai. Radha Gopinath Ju Ki Jai. Satchinandana Gaura Hari Ki Jai. Srila Gurudev Ki Jai. Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Gota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Om Bhagina Timirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Stadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam Bravajantam Anapetyam Apetykrityam Dvaipainu Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putreti Tammayatayo Taravo Vinidustam Sarvabhutam Munimanatoshmi. Bhaktya Vihina Aparada Lakshai Shittascha Karmadi Taranga Mahadye Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapana Brinde Namaste Charana Ravindam Bhajami Radham Aravinda Netram Smarami Radham Madhurashmitasyam Vadami Radham Karuna Bharadram Tato Mamanasti Gatyana Chapi. I first of all offer millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Nitya Leela Pravishna Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parirajacharya, Asto Tadasara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And the same again, millions of times unto the lotus feet of our beloved Nitya Leela Pravishna Om Asto Tadasara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, and all the Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, Dandavat pranams. So, we're reading Venu Gita in glorification of the 10th Canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's very helpful. Each 2 copies left, okay. I'm just waiting for a light so I can read. I think he's gone to get it. So it's very helpful just to regularly reinforce our ability, or not our ability, our allowance, you can say, to speak on these topics, because there are so many prohibitions in the scripture from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, etc., advising us not to go into these topics. I heard the other day that Bhaktivedanta Srila Trivikram Maharaj, at one point he hadn't even read so many pastimes from the 10th Canto. And then he was encouraged by Krishna Priya Didi and Madhusudan Maharaj to actually read those pastimes because of the various restrictions and prohibitions. So it's always very helpful for us to hear the reasons clearly, regularly, why it's okay. The reasons why the prohibitions are there is if you're at all fearful, then there's plenty of evidence to support your fear. If you haven't developed the confidence sufficiently, then there's plenty of evidence for you to remain in a fearful condition, following closely the Vaidhi Marg precepts. But this is not the heart or desire of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And that's just for a few minutes this evening. I want to read from the Adi Lila chapter 4, just to confirm for us, once again, our necessity of hearing these topics. So in Adi Lila 4:18, it's saying, if one regards me as the Supreme Lord and himself as a subordinate, in other words, just like the consciousness within Vaikuntha. Thank you. Just like the consciousness within Vaikuntha is very much of this nature. It's the path of Vaidhi-marg is inspired by fear that if I don't do this, I won't get this result. And if I don't do this, perhaps something negative may happen to me. Like religionists, they often go to church just for the purpose to get something. But what I want to explain this evening, very briefly, how our path is not about getting anything. So it's a completely different approach to our relationship with the Lord. We're not looking for any reward or anything whatsoever. It's an incredibly high place of consciousness. But let me just read some of this Chaitanya Charitamrita, and hopefully you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. So, first of all, Krishna is saying directly, if one regards me as the Supreme and himself as a subordinate, I do not become subservient to his love, nor can it control me. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada has written a beautiful essay called The Epic of Vaikuntha. And he describes in that essay that the residents of Vaikuntha have something of an inferiority complex. This is how he describes it. So this is the condition, that I am feeling inferior and the Lord is so superior. This doesn't engender a very intimate relationship. And then again, Krishna is saying, in whatever transcendental mellow the first verse is, all the universe is filled with the conception of my majesty, but love weakened by that sense of majesty does not satisfy me. And then the second verse is verse 4:18. If one regards me as the Supreme and himself as a subordinate, I do not become subservient to his love, nor can it control me. So these two verses are showing the importance of Mahaprabhu's descent. Mahaprabhu advented to give us the path of Raga-marg clearly. This is why he came. Krishna comes once in a day of Lord Brahma, and every time straight after Krishna comes Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to explain to us who was Krishna and why did Krishna advent. When Krishna advented, who knew why he was performing such esoteric pastimes? Who even knew that he was performing the Rasa Leela? Practically no one except the gopis. Maybe Uddhava, maybe a few Siddha Purushas. Who knew? And he came, he did this most crest jewel of all activities and pastimes, and yet who knew about it? What was the glory of it? So Mahaprabhu, Krishna himself, has to come again and explain the glory of that Rasa Leela pastime. That's why he comes. It's saying, if one cherishes pure, loving devotion to me, Krishna himself is speaking, thinking of me as his son, his friend, or his beloved, regarding himself as great and considering me his equal or inferior, I become subordinate to him. This is Adi Lila, chapter 4, verse 21 and 22. So, now there's a very beautiful purport here that you can read at some point, where Prabhupada is explaining this more clearly. At the end of that purport he says, flawless execution of regulative principles is exhibited in the Vaikuntha planets. And actually in the Bhagavatam we can hear that pastime of Kadama Muni. I was going to explain this morning about Kadama Muni, but we got into other topics. But Kadama Muni, he's the father of Kapila-dev, and he performs flawless regulative principles in his life. And it's very, very inspiring to hear about and read. But the ultimate conclusion of that is Vaikuntha. the ultimate conclusion of intimacy with Krishna is not so exalted as described in the 10th Canto, the relationship between the gopis, etc. So we must see clearly all these differentiations, and then we see the whole broad picture. And then in our own bhajan, we are solid in where we're making our focus on the most intense, intimate relationships. By strictly executing these principles, one can be elevated to Vaikuntha planets, but spontaneous pure loving service is found in Krishna Loka alone. Krishna Loka is Goloka Vrindavan. So Prabhupada is very clearly saying this. If anyone doubts that Prabhupada has given in his literatures the path of Rag Marg, then they haven't really studied his literatures. I would not anyway have understood this clearly unless I was guided by a pure Rasik Vaishnava who illuminated Prabhupada's literatures. Many times people say, oh yes, everything is in Prabhupada's books, but how do you know what is in Prabhupada's books without having the torchlight of Shiksha? It's all there, yes, but how do you know it's there without the torchlight of that Rasik Vaishnava to bring it out, to explain it? Then it's saying again, this is Krishna himself directly speaking, devotional service rendered to me by the living beings revives their eternal life. My dear damsels of Braja, your affection for me is your good fortune, for it is the only means by which you have attained my favor. Now Prabhupada is explaining, pure devotional service is represented by the activities of the residents of Brajabhumi, Vrindavan. During the solar eclipse, the Lord came from Dwarka and met the inhabitants of Vrindavan at Samanta Panchaka, which is Kurukshetra. The meeting was intensely painful for the damsels of Brajabhumi because Lord Krishna had apparently left them to reside in Dwarka, but the Lord obligingly acknowledged the pure devotional service of the damsels of Braj by speaking this verse. So this is the context of this verse. But all the time, Krishna is making reference. You take this path of spontaneous attraction to me. This is what will control me. So this is our path. This is the path that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to give. So in any other school, in any other place, you will not hear these topics so much amplified. They will be more teaching you're not the body, follow the rules and regulations, etc., perform your sadhan bhajan, all these type of things, which are very important, nevertheless, but not as important as understanding what are these intimate relationships between Radha and Krishna. Now Krishna says again, Mother sometimes binds me as her son. She nourishes and protects me, thinking me utterly helpless. My friends climb on my shoulders in pure friendship, saying, what kind of a big man are you? You and I are equal. This is the Supreme Lord. Tomorrow we're going to discuss the Chatushloki. In the Chatushloki, the essence of that is that you get such a profound realization that Krishna is that Supreme Lord of everything. It is his world. He is that Supreme Person. But that Supreme Person can be approached out of intense love. And that intense love is fueled by greed. That greed is fueled by the Rasik Vaishnava explaining within the scriptures this path very clearly that Mahaprabhu has given us. This is Mahaprabhu. And then again, if my beloved consort reproaches me in a sulky mood, that steals my mind from the reverent hymns of the Vedas. How beautiful. The Vedas, the Upanishads, etc., they proclaim the glories of Sri Krishna in such eloquent language. There's a beautiful pastime. One time, Lord Brahma, he came with Lord Indra from the demigods, and they were worshipping Krishna on Govardhan Hill at Govindakund, and they were forming beautiful abhishek, and they had large chamaras and big peacock fans, and huge conch shells, and so on, and 1,000-wicked ghee lamp offering like this. And Krishna was just sitting on a rock, kind of bored, he had like a sweet in his hand. He was just, let them do what they have to do, And they were all performing this very ritualistic, beautiful, puja of Krishna. Indra was trying to seek forgiveness for his, pouring all the rain down on Govardhan. And then suddenly along the pathway came all the cowherd boys singing and dancing. And they could see these shining beings on top of Govardhan Hill. And Madhumangal was saying, because he's like the astrologer and the Brahmin, he thinks he knows everything. These are the denizens from the heavenly world, from the higher planets. And they were all looking, wondering, wow, these people, And then the demigods realized this would create quite a mood of rasabas if all these joyful cowherd boys came into the same, group as the demigods. So the demigods immediately, knowing this, they dropped all their paraphernalia on the ground and they jumped behind the clouds. And then all the cowherd boys came in laughing and joking, and they saw all this amazing paraphernalia left by the demigods. So they picked it up and they began performing the puja of Krishna. And then Krishna was laughing and joking, and they were holding up the ghee-wicks like this, and everything was a whole festival of sweetness. A total different atmosphere from what the demigods had actually, in their very sober way, yes, we are worshipping like this. This huge, difference of mood. And this mood is ultimately that there is something lacking in that sort of soberness or that worship, that awe and reverence. There's something lacking. And what is lacking is a deep mood of selflessness. A deep mood of just wanting to please the object of our love. When you're very seriously serving Krishna like this, you're thinking, yes, I must do like this for my benefit also. This respectful mood. This will be described. I want to describe this now. I'm going to describe it clearly. At the end of this, I'll jump right forward here. There's many verses in this chapter. This chapter 4 of Adi Leela is so important for understanding these topics very, very clearly. So now, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj is describing the love itself, the nature of the love itself. The love itself is the object. Prem is the object. This is what we're trying to appreciate, that object of prem. So now Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj is saying, the happiness of the abode of love, that's Krishna, is in the happiness of the object of that love. So the person worshipping or trying to please that object with the sole intention of just bringing pleasure to that object alone. The sole thought. Then it's saying, this is not a relationship of desire for personal sense gratification. There is no trace, no scent, no smell of that mood in this love. It's purely to please the object of devotion, Sri Krishna. This is the nature of the gopis' love. It's so exalted. And then it's saying, whenever there is unselfish love, that is its style. Its style is to seek the pleasure of the person, the object of devotion. The reservoir of love derives pleasure when the lovable object is pleased. There's a difference between the demigods' worship, that Aishwarya or in reverential worship, and this worship of Braj. When the pleasure of love interferes with the service of Lord Krishna, the devotee becomes angry towards such ecstasy. Now this is really beautiful. This is a commentary now by Srila Prabhupada. As mentioned above, the gopis are the predominated lovers, and Sri Krishna is the predominator, the beloved. The love of the predominated nourishes the love of the predominator. It's a totally reciprocal exchange. The gopis had no desire for selfish enjoyment. Their feeling of happiness was indirect, for it was dependent on the pleasure of Krishna. Causeless love of Godhead is always so. Such pure love is possible only when the predominated is made happy by the happiness of the predominator. Can you understand the language? You can always read it again on your own. You should read it many times actually. Many, many times. Read it again and again. In the quietude of your own place. It's verse 200. This is verse 200 from Adi Leela chapter 4. And there's many verses coming through here describing in such profound detail the love of the gopis. What is the nature of this love? To appreciate the nature of that love will give me the inspiration to aspire for that gopi prem. We are hungry. We want that gopi. We are followers. A rag anuga is a follower of a rag atmika. The rag atmikas have this. They are soaked in these feelings towards Krishna. The rag anugas, they want to follow in the wake of the rag atmikas. This is the meaning of rag anuga. Such unadulterated love is exemplified when the lover depreciates her happiness in service that hinders her from discharging it. Now there's a beautiful example of what's being spoken here. When Daruka, he did not relish his ecstatic feelings of love, for they caused his limbs to become stunned and thus obstructed his service in fanning Lord Krishna. We've heard this example for so many years, how Daruka, he's fanning Krishna, and in his ecstasy of fanning, his body begins to tremble. It begins to exhibit various anubhavs. But he condemns those anubhavs because this is not what he wants. He's not trying to bring himself a wonderful feeling by performing this service to Krishna. This is almost foreign to the conditioned soul. This conception of pure love. The closest we get to it in the material world is between a mother and a child. The mother doesn't have any self-interest. She's totally engrossed in the welfare of the child. She'll happily rise at 2 or 3 in the morning, 5 times a night, 4 times a night. She'll go without sleep. She'll undergo so much austerity for the sake of her child. This is the closest, but nevertheless it's conditioned because she's thinking, this is my child. So there is some selfish tendency there. Would she do the same necessarily for her friend's newly born child? Maybe she would, maybe she wouldn't. If she did it even, she would not have the same feelings as she would have for the child that came from her womb. So again, it's tainted with some mood of selfishness. This is the principal reason why this world is called the perverted reflection. It's perverted because everything we do in this world is conditioned by our selfish desire. We're wanting something. That's why when Sri Guru manifests his presence, he gives us an opportunity to perform selfless service to him. This is why it can become so difficult with the physical departure of Sri Guru. He's no longer there for us to run to him and quickly put all of our pranami or all of our moods of seva at his lotus feet. Now suddenly we have to seek another place to put that energy. Who now will you put that energy of seva to directly? Because Gurudev has said many times, to understand these topics, we have to begin in the external world. We don't begin in some imagined dream type state of consciousness where I'm thinking, oh yes, I'm serving Krishna so nicely, but there's no confirmation of your service. There's no one to say yes. Maybe Krishna will appear to you as smiling pleasantly, and of course he's pleased. But only Guru, he knows what is really pleasing. And that pleasure to Guru may be at many times at our personal expense. He will say, do this and do this and do this, and we are really challenged. In the early days with Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, there are many beautiful descriptions of how the devotees, they went to such remarkable extremes. They were so inspired by dedication to give their entire youth to this personality of Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, that they did the most phenomenal things. You know, the hours and hours and hours and hours they would do kirtan on the street, for example, or distribute books, or go to such degrees because they were offering it directly to that, and they saw direct reciprocation from that personality. But now, what a challenge do we have? What is the reason that Guru has created that opportunity for us to dedicate ourselves to him. It's so that we will use the same ingredient, the same equation, so to speak, now towards Sri Krishna and Radha and all of the holy Dham and our Guru Parampara, even though they're no longer present. We are no longer like babies anymore, receiving some sweet, some acknowledgement, some pat on the head. It's not so easy. Will I come up to the standard now that Guru is no longer present? He is present. He still will understand and appreciate our efforts. Just like, for example, this last parikrama that's just taken place. Just before the parikrama began, there were many difficulties and issues. And many senior devotees were saying, "Oh, I'm not coming, I'm not coming." There was a great sort of exodus, actually, of enthusiasm completely at the beginning of this parikrama, maybe 10 days before. In my own personal life, this was the 18th or 19th parikrama that I've attended with Srila Gurudev. And every time it's been just tough. It's never particularly personally been something that I thought was, relishably to look forward to. It's always been tapasya from like start to finish. I cross off the days all the way through. It hasn't, getting on those stinking buses, bouncing through the rough dust and everything. It's like hard work. And then when Gurudev makes you sit on a stage, well, it's even harder work. I mean, every night sitting on that stage, you can't believe the tapasya of that. It's really, really, I found it anyway, really, really tough. I really don't enjoy it in one scrap. So I was thinking, great, I can jump out of it because a lot of other people are jumping out of it. And I prayed deeply to Gurudev and he didn't give me the stamp. He didn't give me the go-ahead, the green light, yes, you can jump out. Not at all. He actually came and said, "No, I want you to attend." Oh my God, I've got to go through this again. So I went through it again, but the amount of kripa that I experienced on this particular parikrama was more wonderful than I ever experienced in my life. For me personally, it was the sweetest, most wonderful nectar. Every single day was just like so much mercy, of appreciation of the holy places, appreciation of the katha that was being spoken at those holy places. My appreciation for Vrindavan increased 1,000-fold. So Gurudev was directly there. So this example is that if you do still go the extra mile, even though he's not going to be physically there in the external, now we are forced to go internally. We have no choice. If we want to survive in our spiritual progress. And how can we even think for a moment, yes, I'll start going backwards. It's like cycling up a hill. You have to get up quite a bit of steam to cycle up a hill. But what happens as soon as you stop cycling? You just go straight back down the hill again. You can't think, oh, I'll just come into some sort of like, plateau type place. I'll just start cruising for a while. Now the intensity's off, now the pressure's off. It won't work that way. If you're cruising, you can only cruise in one direction. You can't cruise uphill. Have you ever heard of anyone cruising uphill? You don't. You can only cruise downhill. So to retain that enthusiasm and constant vision of Gurudev's presence, especially here in a place like Gopinath Bhavan. How many times has Srila Gurudev swanned his way through between these arches? How many? Practically, you can say more than 100 times. Gurudev has come in and out. He's walked everywhere around here. The atmosphere of a Mahabhagavat remains. It's there in the ether. It's never ever, because it's eternal. So the atmosphere here is eternally surcharged with Srila Gurudev. So by coming here and remaining here for some period of time, we should try even more to connect with Srila Gurudev's presence and ask him deeply from the core of our hearts, how does he want me to proceed now? Now we have more responsibility. This is why, for the last few evenings, I've been trying to explain the authenticity of discussing these esoteric topics. I've been trying to explain from scripture. Tonight I've explained from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi 4. I've read hardly any of it, but there are so many aspects in here that I could speak if we had more time, but I want to speak something on Venu Gita tonight also. But it's just packed with the confirmation, yes, Rag Anuga Bhakti is the path for the sincere sadhak in this age of Kali Yuga. Don't doubt it for a second, and take to it enthusiastically, and don't listen to any other objection that's going to hinder that path. The objection will come always from one place of consciousness. What is that? Fear. Always from fear. And fear is the ingredient of Vaidhi-marg. That's the quality of Vaidhi-marg. That is not why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advented. It is not why Sri Krishna advented 5,000 years ago. He didn't advent to propagate that path. He advented to show his beauty and sweetness, to entice us into the highest realm of consciousness through the path of Rag, to follow in the wake of those Ragatmika devotees. So how is that ever going to transpire unless we constantly hear and remember and speak? Varenyed, what's that? Vikriditam brajavadubiyatam ja Vishnu, Shradanvito nushrunyad artha varenyedya. This is saying in this last verse of Rasa Panchadira that I quoted every night, that first you hear and then you speak, and by that you will remember these pastimes. It's not easy for us. The nature of a conditioned soul is only to be selfish. Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj was constantly referring to this selfless nature, to try and inspire this selflessness within us. How difficult is that? Because we're always afraid, if I start showing a selfless nature, someone's going to take advantage of me. Someone will walk over me. Someone will abuse my kindness or so on. How difficult is it to actually enact that? Only Gurudev is our lover. Only Gurudev is the person who appreciates that entirely. One time I was in England and speaking many different places, and I was feeling I was making so many nice relationships with so many different families and groups. And I was chanting one morning, and Srila Gurudev came in my meditation, and he said, none of these people love you, you know. And it was like, wow. I was really quite taken aback to think that, because I was feeling, yes, I'm creating some sort of like relationship with these different people. And then for some time I was quite like shocked by that understanding, and thinking all sorts of demoniac elements. Yeah, they really hate me, and it was just like this, you know. But then Srila Gurudev came back, and he said, again, after about 15 minutes, actually only I love you. And it took me a long time to begin to really appreciate what he was saying, that only he has our best interest at heart. Anybody else you meet will probably subtly somehow or other flatter you. Will somehow or other, because if they're in a conditioned state, they will also want something. In any conditioned state of consciousness, it's a state of wanting, of desiring. Even in our family lives, the daughter, the son, they want some validation. They want some acknowledgement. They want to know mum still loves them. Dad still loves them. They want something. But the nature of spiritual reality, the nature of spiritual exchange and love is completely selfless. Even when the moods and sweetness is really enveloping the whole self and you're feeling completely blissful, are you just going to sit in that blissful state of consciousness and not do any more service? Just sit in Vrindavan and think, oh yes, I'm feeling so blissful chanting Hare Krishna. This is so wonderful. I'll just stay here forever. Yeah, the atmosphere is so sweet in Gopinath Bhavan. The Jamuna's just right here. Yes, Giriraj Govardhan's over there. We have so many, Tulsi plants, and Vrinda Devi is here. Oh, there's so many nice devotees here. Oh yes, I will be comfortable here. For the deities are so beautifully smiling every day. Yes, why should I go anywhere else? But why has Krishna made this material world himself? He's made it to demonstrate his own compassion. That's why he's made it in the first place. How can Krishna demonstrate compassion in Vaikuntha? Everyone is happy. Everyone is satisfied. No one needs anything. How can he demonstrate it in Goloka Vrindavan? Everyone is fully satisfied. Atmaram and Aptakam. That is the mood of the residents of Vaikuntha. They're in a liberated condition. They don't want anything. They're fully... So how can Krishna show this karuna rasa, this beautiful rasa of compassion? How can he demonstrate it? He can only demonstrate it by making a place where they're unhappy. There's so many things that Krishna accomplishes by creating this material world. He shows the truth of his giving independence to the jiva. It's like you can say that the Father and the Son are like one. But the Son has independence to follow the Father or not follow the Father. And similarly, Krishna has given us independence. He's also given Sri Radha independence. Otherwise, without this ingredient of independence, how can there possibly be love? If you had no independence and we just sprinkle some powder across everybody and say, right, now you all have love of Godhead. Now you all have love for Krishna. Is that going to be really satisfying? It's like some drug. LSD or something. Yes, now I love God. Yes, now everything's been blown open. And then, a day later you're in the gutter again. You're completely miserable. Temporary. What?
So only by our suffering can the jiva understand the compassion of Krishna?
No.
No.
No. That wouldn't make sense. No. We do suffer in this world, but it's not by our suffering that we can come to Krishna necessarily. It is usually the case because we're all suffering the threefold miseries. Adhyatmic, miseries of the mind; adhibautic, miseries by other living entities; adhidaivik, miseries caused by the demigods. So we're all under that blanket of some type of suffering. Yet, it's not in the suffering alone that will bring us to Krishna. No. But the suffering is very often a tremendous impetus. But it's not by itself and of itself the ingredient. It's by our attraction, our gradual attraction to that spiritual world. That is what is going to bring us to a place of wanting to bring pleasure to that Supreme Lord. The more I appreciate just how beautiful, how selfless, how special, how amazing, how wonderful is that personality, then my relationship begins to develop with him. So it's not essentially just about suffering, but it is usual that suffering is the ingredient.
Well, you said that this is why he creates a place where jivas are unhappy.
They're unhappy because they've forgotten him.
Yeah.
But they might be thinking in an illusion state that they're happy. But if they've forgotten him, they can never be really happy. They can never be fully satisfied. So in that sense, they are unhappy. But it's not just by that unhappiness that is going to bring them.
But this is how he shows his mercy, you're saying?
He shows his mercy because it's like a naughty child. A child goes away and tries to do something contrary to the father's will and wishes. The son can never be fully satisfied because he's not actually satisfying the father, but he may be illusioned thinking that he's satisfied to some degree. Like Srila Gurudev said, I'm saying this like in this language because Srila Gurudev has said that if you're not happy now, then you're not really even a devotee. So how do you reconcile that with what you're saying? Can you reconcile? How can you reconcile? If you're not happy, what does this mean if you're not happy? It means, actually, if you're not in the mode of goodness. In the mode of goodness, everything is bright around you. You're still under the mode of goodness. You're still under the laws of nature, but you're in the mode of goodness. So the devotee should be situated first in the mode of goodness to access Vishuddha Sattva, pure goodness. From the mode of goodness, it's very simple to access the mode of Vishuddha Sattva. So in the mode of goodness, you won't be saying necessarily that you're unhappy. So from the mode of goodness, you may have a nice state to live, place to stay, you may have nice foodstuff, etc., etc., but you may be enamored still by that material facility. You may be enjoying it yourself. It's like a description, for example, of ruchi. Ruchi is the stage of taste after nishta. We have shraddha, bhajana kriya, anartha nivritti, nishta. Then from nishta, that very steadiness in our practice, comes the stage of ruchi. Now there are two types of ruchi. The first type of ruchi is when I'm enjoying the taste of my own beauty and swarup. I'm enjoying my own spiritual identity. It's very intoxicating when you start to connect with your higher self. It's very wonderful, it's illuminating, it's beautiful. You become very satisfied, but it's still about you. Then the higher, more evolved state of ruchi is when we are getting a direct taste from our seva and appreciating Krishna's pleasure by our seva. So it's like a stage. You don't necessarily have to go through this first state of ruchi. You can go straight to the pleasure of bringing Krishna, or straight to the satisfaction of bringing Krishna pleasure. You don't have to go through this. It's not, automatic, but it's often the case. We have to recognize this, so when that self-satisfied taste arises, and that illumination of consciousness by the mode of goodness starts to come into our lives, we should not become complacent and think, yes, I have achieved enlightenment. This is the whole purport of actually what I'm saying, or what is being spoken also in this Adi Lila tonight. That not to become complacent even about the mode of goodness. Of course, living in Vrindavan, it's very simple to arrive at the mode of goodness. You can live very simply, you can eat very nicely, you cannot worry about any material problem at all. Everything is just like taken care of. Oh yes, now I can be happy. Beware of that. Hope that you have a friend who will tell you, no, this is not the highest place of consciousness. Actually go further. It's like the example comes to mind of Lord Ramchandra when he was in the forest, and Bharat Maharaj had gone to beg Ram to come back to the kingdom of Ayodhya and take up the kingship. And he even volunteered to put himself in the forest and take that 14 years exile on his head. And then they had an assembly, and all of Ram's mothers were there, Kushalya, Sumitra, etc. And Vashishta was there, and it was presided by Janak Maharaj, the father of Sita. And in that assembly, Janak Maharaj said, now, Bharat, you can proclaim your love for Ram to all the assembly. And then Bharat Maharaj extolled the glories of Ram and proclaimed his great, deep affection for Ram in that assembly. And everyone clapped and cheered. And it seemed obvious, yes, now he said it so beautifully, now Ram must come back to Ayodhya. And then Janak Maharaj said, but my dear Bharat Maharaj, have you considered what Ram wants? What is his feelings? And it was like Gurudev describes, a slap on the face for Bharat. He hadn't actually loved Ram deeply at all, because he wasn't considering his feelings. So often it's like you see sometimes in the world, the so-called Christians, they have this idea of performing service to you. I don't know whether you've met Christians like this. They want to run around and do all kinds of like good acts and good deeds for you, And it gets so like uncomfortable. They're just running around trying to do things for you. And they don't really mean it at all. So it's not really love at all. They're not really thinking about you and what's comfortable for you. I often give this example. One time this person came to me and said, "Oh, Maharaj, I want to give you a massage." And I said, "Actually, I don't want a massage right now." He said, No, I want to give you a massage. Maharaj, I don't really want one. Thank you very much, you know. And then he pressured me so much, I said, "Okay, give me a massage." I had to submit to him. I was serving his desire to give me a massage. I didn't want a massage at all, you know. But he was so, it's sometimes like a mother, they insist, "Oh, you eat this and this will make you happy." You don't want to eat, especially when you go to the Indian homes. They just feed you and feed you and feed you, and you don't really want anything at all. But this is their demonstration. They think of love. So what is love in the material? It's always looking for their own acknowledgement, for our own validation. So we consider these points in the light of the gopis' selfless love. They only wanted to bring pleasure to Sri Krishna. And much more than that, much more than what I'm saying. I'm just scratching at the very edge of the mountain of the gopis' exhibition of love. But this is described more fully. You read it yourselves. Adi Leela, chapter 4, and from verse 200. It goes on, there's so many description. The lotus-eyed Radharani powerfully condemned the ecstatic love that caused a flow of tears that hindered her sight of Govinda. Furthermore, pure devotees never forsake the loving service of Lord Krishna to aspire for their own personal pleasure through the 5 kinds of liberation. It goes on and on and on, extolling what is pure love. It's the most fascinating topic, isn't it? It's the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's the ultimate goal of life, to discover where is this highest conception of love, the sweetest emotion that a person can experience is divine love. This is what we're seeking, this is our goal. And to know, to have knowledge that this pure goal is achieved by carefully serving the lotus feet of Guru, and then he will give us the kripa, the mercy, to actually experience or understand these topics. Our sadhana bhajan is made up of 2 things. What are they? One is our endeavor. Yes, I will rise at 4 o'clock in the morning. Yes, I will chant my Nam Bhajan. Yes, I will do some seva. That is my endeavor. And then that endeavor will be reciprocated by Krishna's kripa, like the 2 fingers that bind Damodar that can't bind him. So we make our endeavor and Krishna will reciprocate. Man proposes in a sense and Krishna will dispose. So like that, that is why we perform our seva. So Gurudev will give us his mercy. Try and go deeply into remembering every single time that Gurudev looked at you, every time he spoke to you, every time he came near to you. Try and remember deeply, because Gurudev has touched us all in some way. And even if we haven't met Gurudev, there'll be some reference in a book that touches our heart, that we can connect that with coming directly from Gurudev. And remember that, cherish it, hold it forever. Don't ever let it go or be compromised. And then we will be successful in our bhajan. Then we can't fail. That has to be the heart. That has to be the guiding light. It has to be there. Because he is our connection, he's our link. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati describes that in the spiritual world, Guru is the greatest servant. And in this world, he's the greatest master. He's what fills the vacuum between this material consciousness and the spiritual consciousness. So take very deep, profound shelter of his feet. Pray deeply that he will bless us to go forward. Bless us to make the right decision. How do you know what decision to make now? Should I do this? Should I do that? How do you know what to do? Usually, I have found personally, many times, that simply by chanting an extra couple of rounds, immediately the indication is inspired what to do, which way to go. Should I do this or should I do that? Failing that, then I must ask a senior godbrother, a senior friend, what do you think? But still don't trust his opinion. try and be influenced directly by Gurudev. If you want to be influenced by Gurudev, he will influence you. It's dependent on our enthusiasm to be influenced by. If we're always thinking of Gurudev, always dependent on him, then how much is he going to come into our lives? But if we're dependent on our own, discrimination, our own power of intelligence, our own strength, our own, abilities, then Guru and Krishna are standing back a little bit. We have to develop this dependence on him deeply, and he will just flow in every part of our lives. So look, it's very close. Let me just... Okay. Do you have any questions about what I've said? Okay. Okay. Great. Okay. Does everyone appreciate what I'm trying to share right now? We're trying to gain the eligibility to read this Venu Gita publicly, which is very, very esoteric and filled with the most profound and beautiful explanations. And we heard last night from Tridandi, who worked on this through 2 editions she's worked on, how these are the very words directly of Gurudev. So I think we finished that verse 8 completely yesterday, so we'll read something of verse 9 directly now. Gopya kimacharedayam kushulam smavenu Dhammaradara Sudamapipo Gopikanam Bhunte Swayam Yad Avashishta Rasham Hridinyo Krisyat Tvachosru Muchachus Taravo Yadarta. This is the correct meter if you sing this. You can sing together? Because you can probably sing better than me. I'm not so good at Sanskrit. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Gopya kim acharedayam kushulam smavenu Dhammaradara sudam api gopi kananam Bhunte swayam yad avishishtam rasam hridinyo Prisyat gachos rumumuchus taravo yatarya. Okay? Try and remember that meter, it's very good. Translation. My dear Saki, one of the gopis said to her friend, this flute is merely a piece of dry wood. We cannot imagine what sort of pious activity he must have performed in his previous births, but in our very presence he is directly and fully tasting the nectar of Damodar's lips, which rightfully belongs to us alone. It is not sparing even one drop of that rasa for us. Seeing the good fortune of this, the Venu, Malasiganga, and other ponds exhibit ecstatic symptoms. The blossoming lotuses are actually their hairs standing on end. Seeing themselves as the family elders of the flute, who is mad for Bhagavan, all the trees rejoice. Under the guise of pouring forth streams of honey, they are actually shedding tears of bliss from their eyes. So Gurudev describes also in another place how the blossoms of Vrindavan are so fragrant. And because of the extremity of their fragrance, millions of bumblebees are buzzing around the flowers. And because of the sound of the bumblebees, then the birds, they also begin to sing beautifully. And then with this as a backdrop, Krishna plays his beautiful flute. And when he plays his beautiful flute, it's like the rumbling sound of clouds. And the peacocks immediately think that the rainy season has begun, and they begin to madly, frantically dance. And when they madly, frantically dance, then all the birds begin to sing very, very much more loudly. And then a great festival seems to manifest. And then the trees and the flowers exhibit even more blossoms. So this is like on itself revolving, creating this incredible festival of sound and color and fragrance and the most beautiful sights. All the senses are being totally excited in this festival of Vrindavan, which Krishna creates by his presence. So in this festival, the gopis are sitting and they're glorifying the sound of Krishna's flute. Now what's arisen in their hearts is this sanchari bhav of like rishya we talked about yesterday, this jealousy. They become jealous of the sound or the jealous of this personality, the flute. How has this flute taken the place of us? This flute is drinking the nectar, this adamrita of Krishna's lips when it belongs to us. This is our property. How dare this flute take that property? This is how the gopis feel in their ecstasy. So Gurudev in his Ananda Vardhini Vyaka, the commentary that increases pleasure. The Braja Ramanis, already desperate to meet Krishna, now become even more restless. This is the nature of Purvarag. It's constantly increasing to such a pitch where they simply have to meet Krishna. Or Krishna has to reciprocate with the height of that anurag that has developed in their hearts. In order to cover up their deep, undivided affection for their beloved, they describe to their closest friends the beauty and other sweet qualities of both Krishna and Balaram. However, they are not able to hide their real feelings for long. So I described yesterday how the flute starts to melt their veneer of shyness. Their veneer, they're trying to protect this very tender feeling of affection they have for Krishna, but the flute is melting it. A vision of Krishna's beautiful form appears in their hearts, and as soon as they see the Venu on his lips, the gopis start admiring the rare good fortune of that flute. I'm reading from page 60. In great wonder they think, there is no need to discuss the Sakha's fortune, as they have taken birth in the cowherd community and have been playing with Krishna since childhood. But what shall we say about the fortune of this Venu? So now they're glorifying these other personalities. These thoughts stimulate the gopis' natural mahabhav, causing a divine madness, unmad, to arise within their hearts. Thus they become jealous, imagining the Venu's supposed good luck. Gopya kim achared ayam kushalam. This verse is explained thus. O Saki, this Venu, what austerities has this dry stick of bamboo performed in his previous life? What charity has he given? What auspicious deeds has he done? And in what holy places has he taken bath in order to always remain at Krishna's lips? Another Saki replies, he has not performed any of these virtuous deeds. If he had, why would he have taken birth in a family of non-moving beings? Yet another Saki insists, if what you say is indeed true, how is it that this Venu is always tasting the rasa of Krishna's lips? Just see how Brajendranandan Sri Krishna loves him. Sometimes he holds him in his hands. Sometimes he kisses him. Sometimes he keeps him tucked under his arm. Sometimes in the fold of his waistband. And sometimes he sprinkles him with the nectar of his lips. How beautiful that they're considering this. If anyone in this entire Vrindavan is fortunate, it is surely this Venu. O Saki, by giving us birth as gopis, the Creator has deprived us of all blessings. Alas, why couldn't we have taken birth as the flute, as the Venu rather? We cannot meet Krishna openly like this flute, nor serve him to our heart's content. Our birth as humans is simply useless. This is like the commodity of love itself is always feeling some restriction until it's completely in union with Krishna. It's only that milan which gives the total satisfaction. But this vipralamba is giving inspiration for the Milan. It's giving nourishment for the meeting. This is the purpose of this Vipralamba, this Purvarag. It's nourishing the meeting. It's giving great greed for that meeting. This Venu certainly must have performed severe austerities or some pious activities in a previous birth. And if we only knew what they were, surely we would do the same, so as to achieve such an uncommon fortune. Come on, let us go to the respected Purnamasi. She is a pure ascetic who knows past, present and future. We will ask her advice and follow her instructions. Then we can also attain this rare auspiciousness. Osaki, another gopi, interjects, this Venu is indeed thoroughly fortunate. There is no doubt about this because he is always relishing the nectar of being with Krishna. For this reason, however, he has become so proud and arrogant that we cannot bear it. Gopikananam, Damodara, Sudam, Api. The nectar of Krishna's lips is meant for our exclusive enjoyment, but he thinks it is his property. Krishna was born in the Gopa dynasty, and so were we. From infancy, we have shared deep love for each other. He is our treasured sweetheart, and therefore we alone have full rights to the nectar of his lips. But this crafty and shameless Venu is depriving us of our natural birthright and brazenly drinking the nectar of Krishna's lips just as he likes. Despite taking birth in the community of Gopas, we are deprived of the nectar of Gopendra Nandan and Sri Krishna's lips. But that Venu, even though taking birth in the family of non-moving trees, is continuously drinking Adamrita. The day Yashoda Mai bound Sri Krishna with a rope, he became famous as Damodar, and that very same day we initiated our loving relationship with him. At that time, no one in Braj knew anything about the Venu. His relationship with Krishna began in earnest only after Krishna began taking the cows out to graze. Although the Venu had only a slight relationship with him, he suddenly became the heir extraordinaire to the full rights of Krishna's Adamrita. Thus he has deprived us Gopikas of this privilege, even though we have loved Krishna since infancy. Therefore, O Sakis, I say that birth as a Venu is higher and more blessed than birth as Gopis. Deliberating in this way on the Venu's great fortune and on their own bad luck, the Gopis naturally characterized by Mahabhav are consumed with divine animosity, jealousy, and other Sanchari Bhavs. Understand the purpose of these Sanchari Bhavs? Because they roll across this lake. They create the wonderment in the relationship. They create dynamism. They create mood. They create ever freshness. This is why these Sanchari Bhavs are coming. Then they humbly say, Bhumte swayam yad avishishta rasam. O Saki, when Krishna puts the Venu to his lips and plays him, his beautiful shining scarlet lips, which defeat even the lustrous color of ripened bimba fruit, turn yellow, being drained of color. It seems that the Venu is drinking the Adamrita so completely that he drains Sri Krishna's nectar-filled sarasa lips, making them juiceless and dry. This Niras Venu is trying to make Krishna's lips dry, like himself. In other words, the Venu himself. Krishna's Adamrita is our exclusive property, but this Venu is drinking all the nectar and snatching our share as well. Of this there is no doubt. Okay, I'm going to stop here. I'll just read the very last paragraph. I hope by reading this a little bit, we become inspired. Personally, in my own chanting, I'll just share this with you for whatever it's worth to you. When I chant, I like to chant at least like 16 rounds to make a foundation. And then again, another 16 rounds, and I'm reading sections from books like this as I'm chanting. Not reading continuously, but just reading maybe 1 or 2 lines, and then chanting, thinking about that topic. And then reading another line or so, and then just chanting. So I'm able to focus my chanting by occasionally reading some lines as I'm chanting. If we're not remembering the Leela while we're chanting, then what are we remembering? What are we thinking about? Oh Krishna, please give me a peaceful mind. Oh Krishna, please make me happy. Oh Krishna something. What is my mind talking about? But if I can gradually, through the months and years, etc., begin to learn to how to bring my consciousness to focus on these topics, such a fountain of joy will begin to be experienced by the practicing sadhak as he brings his consciousness deeply into Vrindavan. And this is Vrindavan. This is real Vrindavan. Hearing the thoughts and feelings of the sweet gopis. This is actually Vrindavan. This is real Vrindavan. It's saying here in this last paragraph, scholars who are well versed in Rasa Tattva have described 2 forms of this bhav, Ruta and Adiruta. On analyzing the words and realizations of the gopis, which have been spoken as the Venu Gita, it becomes absolutely clear that the gopis' praying is of the highest standard, Adiruta Mahabhav. So, this is the nature of prem. There's a very beautiful verse that Rupa Goswami has given that describes prem in a nutshell. It's very helpful for us to remember it. Sarvatya dvamsakarinam yad sarvata dvamsakarine yadyapi dvamsakarinam yad bhava bandhanam sa prem parikirtita. This verse is saying that when there is every cause for 2 lovers to separate, when there are so many obstacles and good reasons why they should separate, instead of separating, they actually come closer together. This is the nature of prem. Now in the example of Radha and Krishna, Sri Radha is in Vrindavan. Her beloved Krishna has gone away for 100 years. There is every cause for her prem, her affection for him, to break. Not only has he gone away, but he's married again. Not only has he married again, but he's married 16,108 queens. Not only that, but he's had so many children. Not only that, he now has so many grandchildren. Wouldn't you think that would be cause for a relationship to break? But instead of breaking, it has the phenomena of increasing unlimitedly. That is the nature of prem. And then there's a second example of Chandravali. Chandravali knows automatically that Krishna loves Sri Radha more than her. Sometimes Krishna is lying on the lap of Chandravali and he says in a bemused state, "Oh Sri Radha." And Chandravali is thinking, why is he calling me Sri Radha? So she says, "Oh Kamsa." And then Krishna says, "Oh bewildered one, why are you calling me Kamsa?" And then Chandravali says, "Oh my dear, can you see Radha anywhere around here?" And then Krishna realizes what he said. But Chandravali realizes the love that Krishna has for Radha, yet still does her love diminish for that? No, because it is prem. And the nature of prem is that it increases. It doesn't diminish or minimize. It increases. It's phenomenal. And then there's a third example of Draupadi. Draupadi had so much prem for Krishna. Not the same prem as the gopis or those intimate personalities with Krishna, but she had so much prem for Krishna. And when her 5 sons were murdered by Ashvatam, did her prem decrease? No, because it was pure prem. It actually increased. She had every reason as a mother to condemn Govinda, to condemn Krishna for allowing Ashvatam to commit this heinous act of murdering her sons. But she didn't condemn Krishna for that. Her prem did not dwindle or minimize at all. In fact, it just magnified more and more. This is the nature of prem. So when we're talking about this prem of the gopis, it's not of this world at all. It's nowhere near. So we have to approach these topics with this purified understanding and mentality that these are all extraordinary, transcendental topics. And I'm praying for the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I'm praying for the mercy of Radha Gopinath. I'm praying for the mercy particularly of Sri Gurudev to allow me to understand a little bit of this immense prem that the gopis have for Sri Krishna, because that is the greatest treasure of life. And we have the opportunity, we can reach it. Jai Srila Gurudev ki jai, Venu Gita ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu ki jai, Sri Radha Gopinath Ji ki jai, Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Jai Jai Radha Ramana Hari Bol, Jai Jai Radha Ramana Hari Bol, Jai Jai Radha. Jai Jai Radha Ramana Hari Bol, Jai Jai Radha Ramana Hari Bol, Jai Jai. Oh Hari Bol, Hari Bol, oh Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Hari Bol, 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 Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Oh Jaya Sachinandan Jaya Gaura Hari, Sachinandan Jaya Gaura Hari. Oh Jaya Radha Gopinath Radha Gopinath Radhe. Oh Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe. Oh Jaya Vrishabhanu Nandini Radhe Radhe Vrishabhanu Nandini Radhe Radhe. Oh Radhe 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 Radhe. Shrimati Radharani Vrishabhanu Nandini Vrajeshwari ki jai, Radha Gopinath Ju ki jai, Sachinandana Gaura Hari ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai, Nantakota Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Vanchakaptarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhavaya Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnave Namo.